Hello, everyone, and welcome to our engineer interview this week, where we're joined by Jack. Now, my
Hello.
name's Scott, and I'm your host for today. Just before we start, I wanted to say thank you again for signing up to this year's competition. For those of you who don't know, this is the Leaders Award competition, where we ask the question, if you were an engineer, what would you do? Every single UK school can take part in the competition, and it's open to pupils from the ages of 3 to 19, where everyone who takes part receives a graded certificate from the engineers, just like the ones we interview. Now, during these interviews, we're going to be speaking with loads of people who work on loads of different projects, all of them showing the wonderful, interesting, and exciting things that happen when you work in the engineering industry. Today, we're joined by a pilot who's going to tell you all about what his journey's been so far and where he wants to go in the future. But that is enough for me. I am now going to pass over to Jack, who's going to kick us off today.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Jack Hall, and as Scott said, I'm a glider pilot. I'm 17 years old, so I'm very fresh into the industry. However, I've been flying for about 6 years now. I'm a student, so I'm in year 13 at the minute. It's the last year of school, which is almost done. And I can start flying professionally next year. We do have a PowerPoint, which is taking its fair time today, which will be loading, but it'll be here shortly. So I'm based in Norfolk, and I fly gliders. So I've been flying gliders for about 6 years now. This year I've become a gliding instructor, so I've now started to teach people how to fly, which has been really, really cool. It's been great to meet loads of really interesting people and see them progress through flying, which is awesome. As well as I am an aerobatic pilot, so I fly with the British aerobatic team. Though in the PowerPoint a little bit later on, there'll be a video of how what aerobatics is, how gliders work, stuff like that. It's really, really cool. I know the majority of you are young people like myself, so a big message in this is going to be get into flying. It's awesome. Even if you don't want to necessarily put a future in flying at all, gliding, flying, anything like that is a great way to start developing professional skills, start putting things on CVs, and it's all around awesome. As I've been saying, hello, I'm Jack, I'm 17, I'm a pilot 6 years. I was saying I was an aerobatic pilot, so I went solo on my 14th birthday to become the UK's youngest pilot. So you can go solo when you're 14, which I find is absolutely awesome. 3 years before you can drive a car. So it was on my birthday, pretty fresh after the COVID pandemic lockdowns. So very fortunate to be able to go solo then, and it was great. So a little bit after that, I got my aerobatic rating, and now been flying aerobatics for about 3 years, and I've got one major competition win, which was super. And now at 17, I'm teaching people to fly. As well as this, I am one of these amazing people. So I am an ambassador of aviation for the Department for Transport. So essentially, what we do is we go around and promote aviation as a whole, all the different pathways into aviation, showcasing their careers and opportunities as well. We have a few different people from all over the sector. So this person here, if some of you are already interested in flying, you might recognise her. She's Emma Henderson. She was on TV a little, I think last year or the year before, with EasyJet Inside the Cockpit. So she's now retired EasyJet captain. We've got Brian Wheeler here, who controls, who's the head of the whole air traffic control system in the UK. Keith, he flies drones to the West Midlands Police. Conchana is a University West London tutor. Susie's a captain with British Airways on the Boeing 777. And we also have aerospace engineers. So Christina and Daniela, they both are engineers. Daniela's actually currently developing hydrogen engines, which is really cool in terms of like the sustainability for the future in aviation. So there's loads of different career paths, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about how to get into different career paths, but as well as primarily focusing on flying, because that's the bit I really know about. So generation aviation is the thing we promote. So it's the aim of inspiring the next generation to get to aviation, which is what I go around and do. So I go around and do the talks and just say, aviation is awesome. Let's get into it. It's really good. So our motto is that we want to build an aviation workforce fit for the future, attracting diverse and talented people into the aviation industry and inspiring the next generation. So why flying? it's awesome to begin with. I think there's nothing cooler at all. So it's always been my dream to fly. Since I was about 11 years old, I just finally decided I wanted to fly. I'm very fortunate. I live 3 miles away from my airfield, so they fly over all the time. I thought, you know what? I think that's great fun. I want to go have a go. That's exactly what I did. And since then, I've just kind of been chasing my dreams, really, and keep progressing forward to the point I am now. And next year, I turn 18, and I'm able to go into the industry professionally, which is super exciting. And I've just been from day one. I've just been starting and progressing to achieve my dreams. So, what I want to share with you that if you have a dream, chase them. And I strongly believe that if you can dream it, you can do it. And that goes to anything, even if it's not in the aviation industry, even if it's anything in the world. If you have a dream, you can go and do it. Because if it's something you love, if it's your passion, just go and do it. It's awesome. So how do you get into flying? Well, there's a few different ways. Some work different for others, but I'm going to talk to you about gliding because that's the way I got into it. So what is gliding? Well, gliding is flying unpowered aircraft. So it's unpowered flight. It's fantastic. So it teaches you the fundamentals of flight, as well as more of how the sky works, reading the sky. And I strongly believe, and it's well said in the gliding world, that anyone who can fly a glider, in theory, could jump into any aircraft and be able to fly it. Obviously, there's lots of different technical aspects, but anyone who knows how to fly can fly anything essentially, and gliding is the best way to start. So, how do you start? Well, there's a few different. There's lots and lots of gliding clubs around the country. At least one in every county in England. So I'm from Norfolk Gliding Club. There's only one gliding club in Norfolk. In Suffolk, which is our bordering county, there's three. So there's many. Gliding is a very friendly community. So when I first went up, I walked into the clubhouse, got welcomed with practically open arms, and I just showed my enthusiasm, my interest to want to learn to fly, and they loved it. So and I was 11 years old, the youngest they've ever taken on. So don't let your age limit what you can do, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. So you can just turn up to the gliding club and show your interest, and they'll run you through like what the gliding world looks like, how it works, how the gliding club runs, different memberships, and then they'll give you a date where you come up for your trial day, and you just take off from there and fly. Additionally, you can just book a trial lesson on every gliding club's website. You can book a trial lesson where you turn up, fly, have a go on the glider. If you love it, join as a member and take off with gliding. There is so our governing body is called the British Gliding Association. If you want to check out the website, it's even got Club Finder on it, so you can go and have a look for all the gliding clubs closest to you and go and apply. There's kind of 3 stages of training. So you have just you learn how to control the glider in the air. Obviously, you don't have an engine, so it's learning how to control your speeds, coordination with the glider, just getting all your natural fundamental flying skills embedded on you. Then once you're all done with that, you move on to the second stage, which is the more technical side. So your takeoff and landings, very crucial. And additionally, you learn how to fly the approach as well. And then they'll start the instructor that you're with will start implementing what to do when things go wrong. So there's a lot of eventualities in aviation. So you'll get taught of what if things don't quite go quite right, what to do. So that's that stage. And then once you're doing everything really independently, we have so for the A-level grading system, it's like the A to F. We have the same in gliders. So you have a training record. The more A's you get, the better you're doing. The more F's you're closer to F's. You need a little bit. You need a bit of work to do. So the more consistent A's you're getting over, I'd say about 2 to 3 weeks, your instructor will have a meeting with the chief flying instructor. They'll talk about your progression, see if they think you're ready. You'll have a flight with the chief flying instructor. If he's happy, you'll then go solo. So when I was talking about if things go wrong, this is a little video. It's something called a spin. It's quite fun. I'll just show you what it is. It's yeah, quite exhilarating, especially if people are slightly adrenaline junkies and like roller coasters. So
into the spin.
So essentially what that is, one wing is flying, one wing doesn't have any energy whatsoever, and you go into this downward spiral rotation, and it's all very exciting. And the first time you do it, it kind of takes you off guard because it feels even more dramatic than it looks. I like aerobatics, so it's really cool for me. But it's different for everyone. But that's one of the things you'll talk to, how to get out of situations like that and what to do if something goes wrong. So after you finished all your training, you then go solo. That photo is of me straight after my first solo flight. As soon as I lifted the canopy up, I was rather chuffed with myself. I'll never forget that flight. It was the weirdest feeling it was the first time in my life where I had such a big responsibility. And when I was in the air, it's like, okay, I have to bring this glider. I've got to land this glider. The £60,000 worth of fiberglass and flying around the sky. It's on me to bring it safely to the ground, and for me to bring me safely to the ground as well. And also the glider, because you've been flying with an instructor in the back. Once he's gone, the glider is so much lighter, so it actually handles quite differently when you're on your own. I was quite light as well, so I was like towards the lower end of our weight and balance scale. So it was a very weird feeling. But certainly a flight I'm never going to forget. It was definitely one of my proudest moments in aviation, which was very, very cool. So after you go solo, what can you do? Well, there's quite a few progression stages. These things that you can see here, so the cross-country endorsements, passenger flying, and becoming an instructor is only a handful of things you can do. When you go solo, you can go for your cross-country endorsement, which essentially allows you to fly from your home airfield to anywhere you want in the UK. You're thinking, oh, gliders, we don't have engines, how we can do that? Well, we rely on something called thermals, which when you see in the summer, when you see a cloud in the sky, and if it's a nice big fluffy cloud and it's got a really dark bottom, there's something called a thermal underneath that, which essentially is hot rising air, which the sun projects onto the ground and then shoots back up into the cloud. And that hot rising air we go towards, and we circle and we rise with it. So if you've ever seen a glider flying about, you see them circling under a cloud. That's why. That's how we stay sustained in the air. So that allows us to go cross country, as well as in this as well. You get taught how to land in fields. So when obviously because we don't have an engine, when the thermals give or take shut off, we can't make it back to the airfield. What we have to do is we have to land in a field. Over the summer, I landed in 16 of them, and it was my first time landing in one. It was quite interesting. It was a very bumpy field, but it was good. Little did I know, I landed straight over the top of a dog walker, who came running over to me, gave me the biggest hug, and asked me if I was all right. I said I'm absolutely fine. I felt really bad. She looked quite shook actually. And then sometimes you have the challenge of farmers. They're sometimes really nice, like really nice guys. I had one farmer come up to me and said, "You can't park there, mate." So he was a nice guy. But then you also do get some farmers who will demand you pay him £150 to let you out of his field. So you meet a big variety. So you really have to dynamically adapt to the people you're dealing with. Passenger flying, really fun. You can take your friends up, family, partner. It's great fun. They just sit in the back seat, you fly them around the sky, and then becoming an instructor, teaching people how to fly. So that's what I've done, and it's great fun. You're showing your passion for flying with other people, seeing them progress, and also being an instructor, I find really strengthens my flying as well, and changing. Like it's interesting to see how many different strategies I have to use to come across to different people, because everyone's different, so they learn differently. So it's really, really interesting to change for each person. And in my words, the most exciting thing that I've done is aerobatics. So to talk about aerobatics, it's a bit complex. There's many different stages. We'll talk a little bit about it in a minute, but this video is about 2.5 minutes long. It just shows it shows what aerobatics can do. So enjoy. So that's aerobatics, and I think that speaks volumes of why I love it. It's awesome. There's nothing quite like it. Especially the first time I did it. It was I never looked back. So, and I think that also shows as well. Gliders are awesome. They could do loads of things. There's a massive misconception that because it doesn't have an engine, can't do much. Well, actually, the video you just saw, that glider's top speed is 173 miles an hour or 151 knots. We refer to it as the V&E, which means velocity never exceed. So don't go past it. Otherwise, if you go past top speed, things start falling off. So it's not good. And it's got a maximum G-force. So as you saw in that video, you might have seen my face actually like quite pull down a lot when I was pulling up. That's something called G-force. So that's me going against gravity. So in that glider, the amount of positive G-force, so the amount of positive going against gravity you can pull is 8.5 Gs. Sounds weird, 8.5 G-force. That means 8.5 times your mass at the minute. So if I weigh 64 kilograms. So if I times that by 8.5 at maximum G-force, that means I'm at 544 kilograms. So I weigh half a ton. Obviously, in that video, I think I pulled a maximum of 6 Gs. So still a considerable amount. It's the weirdest feeling. It feels like someone's sitting on your chest. If any of you seen a photo of a fighter pilot, you'll see that they've got these like vests on. They're wearing trousers. That's to help them sustain G-force. We don't have those, so we have to deal with it firsthand. As well as in that video as well, you saw me push over and all the straps flew up in the air, my hoodie string was filling up in the air. That's me going against gravity. So in that point, I'm weightless. I don't weigh a single thing. So when you've seen people in the space, them floating around, that's essentially what that is. So I was doing the same thing as spacemen, which I think is really cool, or astronauts, not spacemen. So gliders can do loads. They're awesome. The little things about aerobatics, you kind of have like five. There's about 5 stages of them. You have your club, which is right at the beginner, doing little basic maneuvers, all the way to advanced, which is some of the things you saw in that video are really cool, aerodynamically challenging, difficult maneuvers. And I'm at the intermediate stage, so I'm almost at the top progression. And these stages are used in competitions, so that's how like you're categorized. So whichever stage you're up to, you'll compete in that category. So up until the midpoint of this year, I was competing in the sports category, but now I've been bumped up to intermediate. So yeah, guess what? You can do all of that before you can drive a car. So you can fly solo at age 14. You can go and do aerobatics at age 14. You can teach people to fly at 16. You can get your physical license at 16. So you can do all of this before you drive a car, which is absolutely awesome. Yeah, it's really, really cool. So gliding can take you far. There's many different routes it can help you get into, and one of the first routes it can help you get into is transitioning from flying gliders to flying powered aircraft, so aircraft with an engine. So gliding, as I said, gives you a really great fundamental of flight. So it can make the transition to power much easier and actually a lot cheaper. When you get about 100 hours in a glider and get something called a silver endorsement, you can transition your gliding flying hours to power hours. So it actually makes getting your powered license a lot cheaper, which is really good. This can be both for fixed wing and rotary, so helicopters, as well as it can help you become an airline pilot. So my ultimate goal is to become an airline pilot. Always has been. I've been really on the wall of, do I go military, do I go airlines? Because I'd love to fly a fast jet, but then I'd love to fly all over the world with the airlines. So but I think I'm pretty settled in the airlines now. So airlines actually look for people with gliding backgrounds. At my gliding club, I've got someone who works at Virgin Atlantic, and he's a training captain. So he trains up all the new pilots, all the new first officers, and he can actually tell who's been a glider pilot before and who hasn't. So when something goes wrong, in aviation, there's 3 words that everyone would have heard of, which is aviate, navigate, communicate. They're the 3 principles. So if anything goes wrong, aviate means we fly the plane, navigate, know where we are, communicate, talk to air traffic control, talk to whoever we are, and tell them what we're doing. Whenever something goes wrong in the glider, we always sort out the flying first. So whether that's a launch failure, we get the appropriate speed, then we sort out where we're going. Or if it's something in the air, we'll always level out the glider, and that's what this guy says he noticed. So guys who have come in and are now new pilots, when they're being trained, whenever they're put in a situation where things are going wrong, the glider pilot background people, they'll always level out the aircraft and sort it like from a gliding world. So it's great. It also shows enthusiasm as well. It shows a great bit of flight experience. It shows enthusiasm from a young age. So it shows that your passion for aviation, and also implements and shows that you know the pilot competencies and behaviors. So like situational awareness, dealing with pressure, dealing with situations under stress and pressure. So different things like that. So gliding can really help. A little bit about the funding as well. So aviation isn't necessarily the cheapest things to get into. Gliding is a lot cheaper. I mean, when I say that, a flight in a glider, when I first started out, because your class is a junior under 26, and half an hour flight cost me £13, so it's really affordable. These organisations up here, So the Air League, Honourable Company of Air Pilots, Royal Aeronautical Society, they all offer scholarships, sponsorships, bursaries to really enthusiastic aviation-minded people who want to get into flying, and they offer financial help. So you can get like 12-hour scholarships, take you from zero to solo gliding scholarship, different things like that. So if they really see your passion and enthusiasm, they'll basically give you money for free and give you your license, which is awesome. The British Gliding Association, which is the one here, I was talking about that earlier. As a junior, everything is practically half price, almost every club you go to. So you pay your membership, which is about £6 a month for most clubs. So about £60 for a year. For some reason, they always chop off 2 months. It's part of the deal. Some give you half an hour of airtime for free, but usually most clubs for juniors, it's about 25p a minute training to learn how to fly. And there's two different ways you can take off. One's a winch launch, which is essentially this machine at the other end of the airfield, which takes you 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds, and you're all up in the air. It's really cool. That costs you about £4.50. And then there's one with the Aeroto, which you basically are attached to another aircraft, and it tows you up to a designated height. That's a bit more expensive because aviation fuel is quite expensive and stuff like that, and then you'd be looking about £30 to £40. But overall, gliding is a lot more affordable than power flying, in the sense of, in a glider, I could be in a glider for about an hour and it would cost me £30. In a powered aircraft, it's about £200. So it's a big difference. And also going into gliding straight away, it's a first great experience of aviation. Also with the airlines, these two airlines, British Airways and TUI, I'm sure you would have heard of, they are offering to pay for you to become an airline pilot for them. So they're taking on, I think British Airways is 70 individuals and TUI is something about 23 individuals to become airline pilots. So because of COVID, there's been a massive shortage of pilots in the industry, and we're really looking for them. Airlines are desperate. So they're like, you know what? A lot of people, they've finally figured out that a lot of people can't afford the 120,000 pounds it costs to become an airline pilot. So it's like, right, we'll pay for them, which is, you know, superb. So British Airways and TUI, I think the minimum age you have to apply is 17 for both of them. They'll take you from no experience or with some experience all the way to being an airline pilot, and I think all that they ask in return is you just fly with them for about 5 or 6 years. I think you're bonded, and then your airline career just kicks off from there, which is awesome. And yeah, that's everything. So thank you very much for listening, everyone.
Well, Jack, thank you so much for that. We've got some amazing comments that have come in. People have been very impressed and have lots of questions for you as well.
Brilliant.
And the very first question I'm going to ask comes from Terrell in year 2, who asks, how do you keep turning the glider? And this one comes from Essa. What's the best part about flying?
So, sorry, can you say the first question again?
How do you keep turning the glider? As you said, there'll be instances where one wing's got no power and you've got to sort of redo. So how do you keep moving all the acrobatics and the whole flight of the plane of the glider?
So we have on the glider, we have different control surfaces. So we have one called the elevator, which controls the pitch, so it pitches you up and pitches you down. Then we have one called an aileron, which is your roll left and right. Because gliders have massive wings, it when you turn the aileron, it induces something called drag. So you have to put a rudder input, which yaws you from left to right. So you have to coordinate the turn. So we have a stick that's between our legs, and you turn it if you want to go to the right. You turn the stick and rudder together to the right, and then centralize it when you want to stop turning. And you just pull back very slightly on the for the elevator, and it keeps you at the right speed all the way around the turn. So that's how you turn the glider.
And the next question was from Essa, which is, what is the best part about flying?
Oh my gosh, that is a hard
It's a big
question.
question.
That is a big question. The best part, well, I've loved flying since I started. So I think the best part of flying is flying. But I love aerobatics. That is really where
Mhm.
my heart and soul goes into. So aerobatics for me is the best part of flying. But not only necessarily is it the flying side, flying has opened up so many opportunities to me. Like I've been able to go and fly in and out of Duxford. I've been able to fly out of loads of really interesting different types of aircraft. So I think as well, the opportunities and avenues it opens up as well has been a favourite part.
That's interesting. So it's the sort of people you meet and the new opportunities you get just by starting flying. That's really interesting.
I
You
think
talked about you talked about the aerobatics as well being one of your favourites, and this one comes from Dunrossness Primary, which is what's your favourite flip or manoeuvre to do when you're flying?
oh gosh, so I have
Because we saw
two. So
loads.
yeah, so you might have seen one where you kind of we pitched up, but then you saw the glider kind of roll at the top and come back
Yeah.
down. That's something called a quarter clover. So that's a maneuver. So basically, it's a loop, and when you're just about to come upside down, you turn either to left or right, and you basically end. If you were just flying straight and level, you end up off your left wing or right wing, depending which way you turn. Another favorite of mine is something called, it's a bit of a long word, it's an inverted flat spin. Um, Essentially, you pull up into a loop, you put all your flight controls in one corner, so in the back right, and lock the right rudder. And essentially, you then flip on your back and you're circling round rotationally, and you have to recover out of it. And then it's all very dramatic, but it's really cool. It's really exciting.
So it looks a little bit like it might be quite difficult as well, and I can't imagine what it was like to learn. And we had a question from New Mill Primary, which was, what do you find the most challenging about flying?
Gosh, so you flying what you've seen in the videos and is about 6 years worth of learning to fly. When you go solo, your learning doesn't stop. Actually, when you go
Hmm.
solo, your learning only starts there. In your training, you get taught of the very basics and then what to do if a situation goes wrong, and then you're thrown out into the big wide world of flying an aircraft. I've had some very interesting experiences. So with regards to flying very close to other aircraft,
Oh,
other
no.
aircraft almost hitting into me. I Last year I was actually flipped upside down by a flight of 4 fighter jets coming past me.
Oh,
Their
God.
turbulence flipped me upside down, so that was a bit of a challenge. But I think it was when I was learning, there was a little phase where my progression wasn't what I liked. I feel like I'm a bit of a perfectionist.
Okay.
So um, if I don't get it right first time, I get a little bit frustrated with myself, which I you know isn't the best outlook. But um, there was at one point where my progression kind of was stunted a little bit, and there was a few uh, of the older generation instructors that didn't really know how to come across to a young person. So
Oh,
I think it was actually dealing with other people and how they spoke to you and stuff like that. I think that was the most difficult part of learning to fly. Was just dealing with other people. But then once there was there was a younger instructor who put it into, I don't know, sort of more simplistic terms and just kind of broke everything down, which made my progression excel more. So
I like it. Yeah, yeah. I suppose it's that, and especially as young as you were, I can't imagine they'd come across many 14-year-olds who were as passionate and driven as you were to to get up in the air.
yeah.
So we've got a few questions coming in a little bit about what it's physically like to be in the plane. I mean, one question came in was from Chelsea in Brussels. Is do you get dizzy doing all the flips? And if so, what do you do about it? You also mentioned the force, the G-force, is actually pushing physically on you and changing how you feel. So what are you doing with your body to make sure that you're still focused and able to fly?
So a big thing that we cover in aerobatics is human performance. So for example, the first question about it feeling dizzy,
Hmm.
people have different natural tolerances. So my tolerance for aerobatics, being upside down and doing stuff like that, is pretty good. It's very rare occasions where I feel sick, dizzy, or unwell in the glider. It has happened, but that's when I've either not eaten, not drunk enough, and gone and done a few aerobatic sorties, and it does take a lot out of you. It does make you quite tired after it. Um, and then with respect to the G-force question about it being on your chest, there's some different techniques which we can use. So basically, when you're pulling against gravity, so positive G-force, blood is going from your head and making its way to your toes. fighter pilots have this genius contraption where they wear these pressurized trousers which actually squeeze against their thighs, which prevents the blood from leaving their upper part of the body. Obviously, we don't have that, so we have to be quite creative. I don't quite know how it works, but it does. And when we feel like we're getting a bit lightheaded or we feel like the G-force a bit too much, what we actually do is we push our feet and our toes towards us and kind of take really short and strained breaths. Yet again, I don't know how it works, but it does. It does help. And then sometimes you do have to be careful, because when you go from pulling positive G-force then pulling negative, if you haven't been doing like your tensing and stuff like that, you can then feel quite unwell because there's a very imbalance of where your blood is in your body, and it can make you feel very weird and very disorientated. There has actually been a few accidents in the past where people have done a lot of aerobatics, but they've forgotten about their human performance, so haven't been so mind about it. So yeah, that's we tend to strain and tense to prevent all the blood leaving at the top part of our body.
So lots of practice, but still lots of things you're actually having to do while you sit in the cockpit.
Yes.
So we've got some more questions coming in, and we've got about 5 minutes left. So if anybody out there has any questions to ask, please get them in. This question comes from Alaris, and Alaris asks, "Do your glider plane flying hours contribute to the hours needed to get your private pilot's license or commercial pilot's license?"
That's a really good question. So there's a lot of licenses in aviation. If you get into it, you'll get to know this. There's a lot of different types of licenses, and it's all very confusing. Short answer, yes, it can do, but it's only when you have something called a silver endorsement in gliding, and that's comes about you're about 100 hours into gliding. To get your private pilot's license in the UK, you need a minimum of 45 hours. However, with a silver endorsement in gliding, depending on what license you get, so if you get a private pilot's license, a LAPL, which is a light aircraft pilot's license, it's just for weight limits, that can sometimes reduce it to actually down to 12 hours, so it can make it a lot cheaper to get your private pilot's license, especially if you have something called an SPL, which is your sailplane pilot's license. Gliders are sometimes called sailplanes, more like that in America, but so when you can basically add your something called a single engine piston, which is a private pilot plane, and all the hours come together and basically reduces it down to 12 hours. So yeah.
And how many hours do you have in the air so far?
At the minute, I have coming up to just over 215 hours.
Wow. I'm trying to think
Yeah,
now
but
what have I spent 250 hours doing. Definitely not flying.
but that's over about 6 years. So
Yeah.
in the winter at my club especially, we have a lot shorter flights. So but in the summer, so the longest I've spent in a glider is about 5.5 hours. Just going off thermals. So you can have a short flights from 3 minutes up to the longest flight in the world for duration time was 26 hours.
That's a long time.
Very long time.
And so we've got a couple of questions. You mentioned how young you can be to start learning how to fly, but is there age limits? How old do you have to be a qualified pilot?
So to be qualified, so to be a qualified glider pilot, so you can go solo at 14, but you get your license at 16, because you have to do a little exam for it called your bronze. To be qualified in your private pilot's license, you have to be 17.
Mhm.
And then to be qualified as a commercial pilot or an airline transport pilot's license holder, you have to be at least 18.
Brilliant. So still young, actually. Yeah.
Still very young. It's very difficult. It's I don't think it has happened yet, an 18-year-old becoming an airline pilot, because it's about 18 months training and you can't start till you're 18. So it's I think the
Yeah.
minimum to get qualified and the minimum to train is both the same there.
So we've got time for just a couple more questions. This question came in from year 3 at the British School in Brussels, which is you talked about how you would like to go into being a commercial pilot. And with all your flight hours so far, I can imagine that's hopefully near future. But what about 20 years from now? What do you see yourself doing?
Oh my gosh, 20 years from now, gosh. Um, So I see myself with an esteemed airline, something with like British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, uh, hopefully 20 years down the line as a captain or even a training captain. I've really enjoyed instructing, so I really want to continue that on into the commercial pilot world, to help train the new first officers or second officers coming in as newbie pilots. But as well as I by that time hopefully get my private pilot's license as well, so have a little plane or something just to tour around the UK or Europe or something like that. So that's where I see myself in about 20 years.
Not too bad. Little
Not
plane to
not
sort of fly around Europe. It would be
yeah,
nice, yeah.
not too bad.
We did because another thing as well about 20 years from now is what does the future of flying look like? I mean, we got a question from Dunrossness Primary, which was about testing of new planes, and if you know of anybody who gets involved in that, or is it all a big secret? What do you know about new planes and new flight?
So for when planes are first developed, or they've got the idea of, aircraft manufacturers are very don't tell anyone, because they'll go and because their competitors will
Yeah.
develop something similar and make it better as such. So people might know of Airbus and Boeing, their rivalry is very intense. So if one creates a plane, the other one will have to as well, and they keep developing it. So in the very early stage, it's all very classified. Same with military as well. So not until, well, for a very long time, the Tempest, which is the very new next generation fighter jet that's coming up,
Mhm.
that was very classified, but they've released that over the next few years. And when I met Scott in person at the Royal International Air Institute, there was even a model of it which you can go and sit in, which is very cool. But then when once the aircraft's manufactured and is produced, they make one model and it's called a demonstrator, and then they get so if it's an airliner, they'll get a group of test pilots together and they'll go fly it for the first time. They'll have no idea how to fly it. They know how to fly, but they're basically chucked into the deep end blind and meant to see how it reacts. Same with fighter pilots. So fighter aircraft, you have test pilots for those who'll just jump in it, see any flaws, and then report back to the manufacturer, and then they'll deal with it.
Wow, but so it is at the high level of the brand new stuff. It is quite hush hush, is it?
It
Yeah.
is, yeah. They're all very competitive about it, so it's very kept quiet.
Okay, well, we've got time for one more question. And I think this question is good for everybody who's been inspired by you today, which is if anybody is sitting out there thinking, I want to get into gliding and flying, what advice would you give them?
Just really show your enthusiasm. Even if you're like partially interested in aviation and thought, you know what, go and give it a go. Show your enthusiasm and just show that you're a massive team player, your dedication. And also in your if or when you do take up your gliding journey, just don't be afraid to ask any questions. It's great to be curious. There's no such thing as a stupid question. You take up every opportunity you can and really just chase your dreams, because that's the best thing you can do.
Brilliant. Well, that's some excellent advice. And I just want to take that point to thank everybody for joining us. But a massive thank you to Jack today for inspiring all the engineers in the making out there, because now it is your turn to come up with your own ideas. Now, remember and send them to us once you've finished so we can get our certificates sent out to you. And then we'll hopefully see you all at our public exhibitions at the end of the school year. But massive thank you again to everybody, but especially Jack. And remember, if you were an engineer, what would you do? Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.